Hey there, and welcome. We're about to dive into Unit 4, Lesson 6. My goal here is to get you totally prepped for that upcoming quiz on presentation methods. So, here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about turning data into a story. Then, we'll hit the 4 main ways you can share your research, figure out how to pick the right tools for the job, and, this is the best part, we'll tackle some practice questions that look exactly like what you'll see on the quiz. Ready? Let's get into it. All right, so you've put in all the hours, you've done the research, now what? The big question is, how do you actually share what you found in a way that people will understand and, actually listen to?
Think about everything you've done up to this point, right? You came up with a research question, you built a survey, you collected all that data, and you organized it into tables. But none of that matters if you can't share it. That last step, communication, is the whole point, and that's what we're focusing on today.
Okay, moving on. Let's break down the 4 main ways you can present your findings. Each one has its own set of rules and is good for different situations, so let's check them out. First up, we have the classic written report. This is your formal academic paper. Intro, methods, results, conclusion. But here's what's super important. The rules. You've got to cite at least 5 sources, have a proper bibliography, and this is crucial. No personal opinions. You can't say, I think or I feel. Your job is to present the data, period.
Option number 2 is a visual display. The best way to think about this is like a science fair project or a poster you'd see in a library. It's designed to catch someone's eye as they walk by, so you're going to use short sentences, pictures, and graphs. But, and this is a big but, look at the rules. Even on a poster, you still need a bibliography. That's a theme you're going to see a lot. Always, always cite your sources.
Then there's the oral report. This is when you're actually standing up and talking to an audience, maybe at a meeting or in class. Now, the most important thing to get here is that it's a summary. You're not reading a whole paper out loud. You're giving the highlights, probably using some graphs to help explain things. And check this out, you have to mention your sources while you're talking and include a bibliography in the written report that goes with it. So you're covering your bases twice. And last but not least, the multimedia presentation. This is exactly what you're watching right now. A slideshow made with something like PowerPoint or a video. The flow is logical. Title, background, data, conclusion. And you guessed it, you have to cite your sources. The big rule for this format, the bibliography is always the very last slide. That's a key quiz question right there, so lock it in. Okay, so now you know the 4 options. But how do you pick the right one? And just as important, once you've picked your method, how do you choose the right graph to show your data? Let's figure that out. It really all comes down to your audience. Who are you trying to talk to? If it's the general public just wandering through a library, a big visual display is going to be your best bet. If you're presenting to, say, the city council, you'll want to do an oral report. If you're trying to reach a massive TV audience, a multimedia presentation is the way to go. And of course, if it's for a teacher, well, you better check the assignment to see what they want. All right, let's talk graphs. Choosing the right one is huge. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Bar charts are for comparing things. How many 9th graders like pizza versus 10th graders? That's a bar chart. Pie charts are for showing parts of a whole. What percentage of the total budget is spent on supplies? That's a pie chart. So bar chart for comparison, pie chart for parts of a whole. Got it?
And the source material really hammers this point home. It says flat out that because you're comparing specific numbers across different groups, like the transportation costs study example, a bar chart is probably a better choice. Why? Because it gives you that numerical scale so you can see the differences clearly all in one place.
Okay, theory time is over. Let's put this stuff into practice. We're going to walk through some questions now that are designed to be just like the ones you'll face on the quiz. Let's do this. Okay, for the next 3 questions, we're going to be using this table right here. It's all about student snack preferences, what 9th and 10th graders like, and how much they spend. Just take a second to get familiar with the numbers before we jump in.
All right, question 1. It's asking if a bar chart or a pie chart would be best to show the numbers of students. The key word there is numbers. We're comparing distinct values. 78 kids here, 74 kids there, 68 versus 78. When you're comparing different groups like this, what do we use? Yep, it's a bar chart for sure.
Question 2 is basically the same idea, but now we're looking at average monthly spending. We're still comparing specific dollar amounts. $18 versus $62, $23 versus $53.
Since it's a direct comparison of numbers between groups, a bar chart is, once again, the right tool for the job.
Okay, number 3. The hypothesis was that more students would choose fresh fruit. Let's check the data. For 9th graders, 78 chose fruit, only 74 chose pizza. So far, so good. But wait, look at the 10th graders. Only 68 chose fruit, while 78 chose pizza. So the hypothesis worked for one grade but not the other. That means overall the hypothesis was not supported. The answer has to be no.
All right, a true or false question. A researcher's opinion should not be expressed in a presentation. What do you think? We hit this one pretty hard earlier. True or false?
The answer is true, absolutely 100% true. Research has to be objective. You can't write, I think or I believe. You just present the facts and let the data do the talking.
Okay, next one. True or false? If a visual display is chosen to present research, a bibliography is not necessary. Think back to that science fair poster example. Did it need a bibliography?
That is definitely false. Remember the golden rule we talked about? It doesn't matter what format you use, a paper, a poster, a speech, you always have to include a bibliography. You have to cite your sources, every single time.
Last true or false here. An oral report requires a bibliography. So you're given a speech. Do you still need that list of sources?
And the answer is true. Remember, the oral report is just a summary of a longer written paper, and that written paper absolutely must have a bibliography. So by extension, the oral report requires one too.
And that's a wrap. So now you know how to choose the right method, how to pick the right chart, and what to look out for. The big thing to remember is that doing the research is only half the battle. How you tell the story of that research is just as important. So go out there and tell your story. Good luck on the quiz. You've got this.